There's a kind of quiet that comes right before God moves. Not the peaceful kind, the other kind. The kind that makes you check your phone 3 times, even though nobody texted. The kind that settles over your house at night and makes you wonder if you missed a turn somewhere along the way. If you've been living inside that quiet lately, if the days feel heavier than they should, and you can't put your finger on why, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Because that silence you've been carrying is not emptiness. It's pressure. And pressure always means something is about to break open. My name is George, and I've spent more years than I can count sitting with people in the hardest seasons of their lives, at kitchen tables, in hospital waiting rooms, on porches at 2 in the morning when the coffee had gone cold and the questions wouldn't stop. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: God almost never moves without warning. He sends signs. He leaves fingerprints. He drops little clues along the road, like a father leaving the porch light on, so his child can find the way home. The problem isn't that the signs aren't there. The problem is that most people are too tired, too distracted, or too discouraged to notice them. So today I want to walk you through 9 of those signs. 9 things God tends to do right before he breaks open something major in a person's life. And I'm not talking about small adjustments. I'm talking about the kind of breakthrough that splits your story into a before and an after. The kind of shift you'll be telling people about 10 years from now. Some of these are going to sound familiar. Some of them might sting a little, but I'd ask you to be honest with yourself as we go. Because if even 3 or 4 of these are happening to you right now, you are standing closer to the edge of something than you think. Let me start with the first one, and it's probably the one nobody warns you about. The first sign is that everything starts to feel like it's falling apart at the exact moment you expected it to come together. Think about that for a second. You've prayed. You've believed. You've done the inner work of holding on. And instead of things getting easier, they get harder. The car breaks down. The relationship gets strained. The job that felt steady suddenly feels like sand under your feet. And the enemy, and yes, I believe there's an enemy, whispers that you did something wrong, that God forgot you, that you're being punished. But here's what most people miss. In the Bible, the deepest darkness almost always came right before the greatest deliverance. Look at Joseph. The man had a dream from God, a real one. A vision of his future so clear he couldn't keep it to himself. And what happened next? His own brothers threw him in a pit, sold him like cattle. He went from favored son to slave in a single afternoon. Then he got thrown in prison for something he didn't even do. Years went by in that cell. Years he watched other men get released, while he stayed forgotten. If you had walked up to Joseph in that prison and told him he'd one day stand second only to Pharaoh over all of Egypt, that nations would come to him for bread, that the very brothers who sold him would one day bow at his feet, he'd have looked at you like you'd lost your mind. But the pit wasn't the end of the dream. The pit was the road to it. Every closed door was quietly moving him closer to the throne room. I've seen this play out in ordinary lives more times than I can tell you. The woman who lost the job she thought was her whole identity, only to find the work she was actually made for 6 months later. The man whose marriage fell apart and who swore God had abandoned him, who later said that breaking was the only thing that ever got him on his knees. When everything falls apart right before your breakthrough, it isn't the sign that God left. It's the sign that he's about to show up. The falling apart is not the opposite of the breakthrough. Very often, it's the front door of it. The second sign is that the people around you start to pull away. And this one hurts in a particular way, because it doesn't always come with a fight. Sometimes it's just a slow drift. Friends you used to talk to every day get quiet. The crowd you ran with doesn't quite fit anymore. You walk into rooms where you used to feel at home and something in you whispers, "This isn't my place anymore." You start to feel lonely in a way you can't explain, surrounded by people, but somehow on the outside looking in. I've watched this happen to so many people, and at first it always feels like rejection, like something is wrong with you. You replay conversations in your head, wondering what you did. You wonder if you said something, if you changed, if you somehow became hard to love. But more often than not, it's separation, not rejection. There's a difference. Rejection is people pushing you away because of who you are. Separation is God quietly drawing you out because of who you're becoming. They feel almost the same from the inside, but they lead to completely different places. There's a difference. God was moving Abraham toward a promise so big, it would change the whole world. And the very first thing he told him was to leave. Leave your country. Leave your father's house. Leave the familiar. Why? Because some promises are too large to be carried in your old life. You cannot take the entire crowd with you into the next thing God has for you. Some people were assigned to a chapter, not the whole book. The relationships that are quietly falling away might not be a punishment. They might be God clearing the field so the new thing has room to grow. Loneliness, in a season like this, is often just the waiting room before the calling. The third sign is that your old comforts stop comforting you. The things that used to numb the ache don't work anymore. The shows you used to lose yourself in feel hollow. The habits you used to hide behind leave you feeling worse, not better. You go back to the well that always satisfied you, and you come up dry. And it's confusing, because nothing changed about the thing itself. What changed is you. This is one of the surest signs that God is preparing you for something larger. He starts by making the small things lose their grip. The prodigal son, remember, had to get to the place where the pig slop looked good before he came to himself. Picture that for a second, a young man who'd had everything, sitting in a filthy pen, so hungry the food meant for animals started to look like a meal. As long as the far country still entertained him, he stayed. The wine still flowed, the friends still laughed, the music still played, and he had no reason to look back toward home. It was when the comforts ran dry, when the party ended, and the money was gone, and the so-called friends had scattered like smoke, that he finally turned toward home. And here's the part that gets me every time. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and ran. The drying up of the far country was the very thing that sent him back into his father's arms. If your old comforts have stopped working lately, don't panic. That hunger you feel, that holy dissatisfaction, is God loosening your grip on the small, so your hands are free for the large. He's not taking the comfort to punish you. He's taking it because there's a feast waiting that the slop was keeping you from. The fourth sign is that you start waking up in the middle of the night. Not because something is wrong, not because of noise. You just wake. 2 a.m. 3. Your eyes open in the dark, and your mind is unusually clear. And there's a sense, faint but real, that you're not alone, that something is stirring. A lot of people brush this off. They reach for their phone, scroll until they're numb again, and fall back asleep. But I gently encourage you not to do that. Because all through Scripture, God spoke in the night. He came to Samuel as a boy when the lamps were low, and the temple was quiet, called his name so clearly, Samuel thought it was the old priest sleeping down the hall. 3 times he got up and ran to Eli before they understood it was the Lord. He came to Jacob in a dream with a ladder reaching to heaven and angels moving up and down it. And Jacob woke and said, "Surely the Lord was in this place, and I knew it not." He came to Solomon in the night and said, "Ask for anything you want." There's something about the stillness of those hours, when the noise of the day finally goes silent and your defenses are down. That opens a door. The mind that argues all day finally goes quiet enough to hear. If you've been waking at the same time night after night, with a stirring you can't name, and a clarity that feels almost out of place at that hour, I'd ask you not to scroll past it. Don't reach for the distraction. Sit up. Get quiet. Whisper, "Lord, if that's you, I'm listening." You don't have to perform. You don't have to have the right words. Just make yourself available. You might be surprised what comes in the silence you've been sleeping through. The fifth sign is a deep, almost physical exhaustion that rest doesn't fix. You sleep 8 hours and wake up tired. You take the weekend off and still feel worn through. It's not the exhaustion of a hard week. It's a tiredness that lives in your bones, in your spirit, and no amount of sleep seems to touch it. Now let me be clear and careful here. If you're feeling persistently drained, please see a doctor and let them check on you. Because your body matters, and God works through wise care. I'm not telling you to ignore your health, but once you've done that, I'd ask you to consider that there may be a spiritual layer underneath. Sometimes this kind of weariness comes because a season is ending, and your spirit knows it before your mind does. Elijah, after the greatest victory of his life, collapsed under a tree in the wilderness and asked God to just let him die. He was that empty. And God didn't lecture him. He sent an angel to feed him, let him sleep, fed him again, and only then, once he was restored, did he give him the next assignment. If you're running on empty right now, it may be that God is about to do for you what he did for Elijah. Sometimes the deepest tiredness comes right before the freshest strength. And that brings me to something I need to share with you, because it sits right at the heart of everything I've been describing. What you just experienced was not content. It was a mirror. And mirrors demand a decision. If you are ready to go to the root to finally understand why you think, feel, and perceive differently from everyone around you, the secret protocol carries the 7 keys that reveal what God placed inside you before you ever drew your first breath. Full audiobook included for every moment of your day. Plus the awakening map, as a bonus, the 5 stages of spiritual awakening mapped with clarity, showing where you are right now and what the Spirit is releasing in this season. Link pinned in the first comment. Not for much longer. And you did not make it to the end without a reason. Now let me keep going. Because the next 4 signs are the ones that tend to show up closest to the breakthrough itself. The 6th sign is that an old dream you'd buried starts coming back to life. Something you wanted years ago, a calling, a hope, a quiet ambition you'd long since talked yourself out of, suddenly resurfaces. You'll be driving, or doing the dishes, or sitting in church, and out of nowhere it rises up in you again. And your first instinct is to push it back down. You tell yourself, it's too late, you're too old, you missed your window, that ship sailed. But I want you to hear me. When God resurrects a dream you thought was dead, it's not nostalgia, it's preparation. Think of Abraham and Sarah, well past the age of any reasonable hope, told they would have a child. Sarah laughed, and who could blame her? She'd buried that hope so long ago, she'd made peace with the grief of it. But God asked the question that echoes down to us still. Is anything too hard for the Lord? The dream wasn't dead. It was just waiting on God's timing instead of theirs. And when Isaac finally came, his very name meant laughter. Because the God who seemed to delay had only been setting the stage for joy. I've sat with people in their 60s who finally started the thing they dreamed of in their 20s. and watched it bear more fruit than it ever could have back then. Because now, they had the wisdom, the scars, the depth to carry it. If something you gave up on is stirring again, pay attention. God doesn't usually waste his time reviving things he doesn't intend to fulfill. He's not in the business of teasing his children. When the dream comes back, it's usually because the season for it has finally arrived. The seventh sign is that you suddenly start craving silence. The noise you used to fill every moment with begins to grate on you. You turn the radio off in the car and just drive. You find yourself wanting to be alone, not in a depressed way, but in a hungry way. Something in you is reaching for stillness, for space, for a quiet you can't quite explain. People around you might even notice. He's gotten quiet lately. She keeps to herself more than she used to. This is one of the most beautiful signs, and one of the most overlooked. Because almost every major encounter with God in Scripture happened in a place of withdrawal. Moses met the burning bush alone on the far side of the wilderness, tending sheep, miles from anyone. Jesus himself, before every major moment of his ministry, withdrew to lonely places to pray. The crowd was never where the breakthrough happened. The breakthrough happened in the quiet. So if you're suddenly craving solitude, don't fight it, and don't feel guilty about it. That hunger for silence may be your spirit, making room for a voice you've been waiting your whole life to hear. The eighth sign is that your discernment sharpens almost overnight. You start seeing through things you used to fall for. You sense when something's off about a situation before you have any evidence. You meet someone, and within minutes you just know this person is safe, or this person is not. You read a room you walk into. You feel the difference between what people say and what they mean, and it can be unsettling at first, because you're not used to seeing this clearly. In Scripture, this kind of sharpened sight always showed up when God was about to use someone. He gave it to Daniel in a foreign court, full of schemers and flatterers, and Daniel saw what no one else could see. He read the writing on the wall when the wisest men in the kingdom stood there baffled. He gave it to the prophets so they could tell the true voice from the false, the real word from the counterfeit. When God is preparing you to walk into a new season, he upgrades your eyes for it. He doesn't send you into deeper water without deeper sight. A father doesn't hand his child the car keys before he's taught them to see the road. If you've been seeing things lately with a clarity that almost frightens you, sensing the motives behind the words, feeling the shift in a room before anyone speaks, take heart. That's not paranoia. That's God adjusting your vision for where he's about to take you. He's giving you the discernment now that you'll need for the assignment later. And the ninth sign, the one that almost always comes last, right at the threshold, is a peace that makes absolutely no sense. After all the falling apart, the loneliness, the exhaustion, the long nights out of nowhere, a calm settles over you that you cannot explain. Nothing in your circumstances has changed. The bills are still there. The problem is still unsolved. By every earthly measure, you should still be anxious. And yet you're not. There's a quiet confidence in you that whispers, it's going to be okay. And you can't account for it. That, my friend, is the peace that passes understanding. It's the peace Jesus had asleep in the back of the boat while the storm threw water over the sides, and grown men, experienced fishermen who'd spent their whole lives on that water, panicked and bailed and shouted over the wind. The disciples thought he didn't care. We're perishing, they cried. And, you're sleeping? But he wasn't careless. He was anchored. He knew who his Father was, and he knew the storm didn't get the final word. He stood up, spoke 3 words to the wind, and the sea went flat as glass. When God gives you that kind of unreasonable peace right in the middle of an unresolved storm, It's almost always the last sign before the breakthrough breaks. The peace comes first. The deliverance comes right behind it. The calm before the rescue is still calm, and it's a gift. So if you find yourself strangely at rest, in the middle of something that should be keeping you up at night, don't talk yourself out of it. Don't go looking for the anxiety you think you're supposed to feel. That peace is not denial. It's evidence. It's God's down payment on the thing He's about to do. So let me bring all 9 of these together, because I don't want you to walk away from this just collecting a checklist. Everything falls apart. People pull away. Old comforts go dry. You wake in the night. A deep tiredness settles in. A buried dream returns. You start craving silence. Your discernment sharpens. And finally, an unexplainable peace arrives. Look at that pattern for a moment. It's not random. It's a path. It's the shape of how God so often brings a person from one season into the next, stripping away the old, getting you alone, getting you quiet, and then filling you with a peace that prepares you to receive what He's been building all along. Every single step has a purpose. Nothing in it is wasted. What feels like 9 separate troubles is actually one careful process, moving in one direction, toward one door. If you're sitting there recognizing yourself in even a few of these, I want you to know something. You are not falling behind. You are not being punished. You are not losing your mind. You are being prepared. The season you're in right now, the strange, heavy, in-between season that doesn't make sense, is not a detour. It's the runway. And runways always come right before the takeoff. I think about the people I've sat with over the years who were in exactly this place. The ones who almost gave up 1 week before the answer came. The ones who were certain God had forgotten them, only to look back later and see that those very months were the most important of their lives. I remember one woman in particular, I won't share more than this, who told me through tears that she was done, that she'd prayed for years and heard nothing, and couldn't do it anymore. I asked her to give it 1 more week. Just 1. And before that week was out, the very door she'd given up on swung wide open. She called me and could barely get the words out. Almost every single one of them said the same thing afterward. I had no idea I was that close. They couldn't see it in the middle of it. Nobody can. That's the nature of the thing. You're always closest to the dawn when the night is darkest. The breakthrough is almost always closer than it feels. And the temptation to quit always burns hottest right before the answer arrives. That's not a coincidence. That's a battle for the last few steps. There's a verse I keep coming back to, where God says He will give beauty for ashes, and the oil of joy for mourning, and a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. Notice the order. The ashes come first. The mourning comes first. The heaviness comes first. And then comes the exchange. If you're holding ashes right now, don't throw them away in despair. Hold them out to God. Because ashes are exactly what He asks for when He's about to hand you beauty in return. The heaviness you've been carrying might be the very thing He's about to trade for something you've prayed for half your life. I want to encourage you to do something tonight, before the day ends. Find a quiet corner of your house. Turn off the noise, and just talk to Him plainly, the way you'd talk to a father who's been waiting up for you. Tell Him you're tired. Tell Him you're confused. Tell Him you've been seeing the signs and you don't fully understand them, but you're listening. You don't need fancy words. He's not grading your grammar. He's listening for your heart. And I believe, with everything in me, that the same God who put these signs in your path is more than able to bring the breakthrough they're pointing to. Before you go, I want to hear from you, and I want you to be specific, because this matters. Out of the 9 signs I just walked through, tell me in the comments which number is happening in your life right now. Just the number. And then one sentence about what it's been like for you. Not a vague "this spoke to me." I mean the real thing. Sign 3. And my old comfort stopped working a month ago, and I didn't understand why until tonight. Sign 9. And I've had this strange peace I couldn't explain. Tell me the number, and tell me your sentence. I read these, and there is something powerful that happens when one person says it out loud, and the next person reads it, and realizes they're not alone on this road. This channel is created without ads and without platform income. If these messages have touched your heart, strengthened your faith, or helped you during a difficult moment, and you'd like to support this work, you can use the CR code on your screen or the contribution link in the pinned comment. Thank you for walking this path with us.